Were you there? Were you there? I was. I've been there, and I've done that. And my friends who are with me tonight have been there and done that also. Many stories have been told about us. Some of them are true, some of them are not true. And in the eyes of some, we're safe. In the eyes of others, we live scandalous lives. We all travel a different route, but going in the same direction. We represent different comparisons and different journeys. My friend Dorothy Day traveled a long, arduous journey, a long, lonely journey. And it was often rocky, and she was often sad. I know what Catherine Sienna said about all the way to heaven, being heaven, but I must confess that for me, the journey was hardly a straight ride down the highway of holiness. Let's just say I took the back roads, the indirect route. For mine was meandering and often lonely journey toward God, a God who haunted me from my earliest years. I hear people calling me a saint and I cringe. Believe me when I tell you that I was far from perfect. I was often impatient, short-tempered, and wickedly self-righteous. In my younger years, I smoked like a fiend, took up with wrong men, and lived the most disordered life. No, do not dismiss me by calling me a saint. It would be better to say that I was a woman of great passion, a woman who felt deeply, a woman who loved strong black coffee, Russian novels, and the poor immigrants around whom I lived. A woman whose very soul cried out for justice in a world growing cold. Yes, I took a few rocky detours in my search for love, but God honors our deepest desires, and eventually this search led me to the feet of Jesus and into the arms of Lady Poverty. But that's been the head of my story. For now, just suffice it to say that I was, to put it euphemistically, a woman with a past. I was born in Brooklyn Heights, New York in 1897. My parents were Christian, but religion was not practiced in our home. As a child, I attended Protestant church services on my own and enjoyed the stories of the saints that my Catholic friends often told me. But as I got older, the voice of God was muted by a louder voice. The voice of revolution, you see, was sweeping the world in those heady days, and the call to unite with the workers of the world was one which touched my heart and captured my soul. I looked around at an ugly world and at a dirty, rotten system that professed to be Catholic and decided I wanted nothing to do with it. As far as I was concerned, Christ no longer walked the streets of this world. He was 2,000 years dead, and new prophets had risen up in his place. I moved to the Lower East Side of New York, where I spent my days writing for a number of radical journals. Without going into detail, I can assure you that my evenings were spent in activities that were less than pious. It's enough to say that I often found myself collapsing into a back pew at St. Joseph's Church in the village after a night of carousing with other radicals and artists. I thought at the time that these unlikely church visits had to do with my need for peace and quiet. I discovered later it had to do with my need for God. A need that was increasing as I felt myself slipping into disillusionment and despair. A bitter love affair. An abortion that I deeply regretted. And a humiliating arrest during this period left me utterly exhausted. I needed silence. I needed rest. And so I moved to a secluded bungalow on Staten Island. begin to whisper, "Thank you," to something or someone before dropping into bed at night. When Tamar was born, I decided to have her baptized in the Catholic Church. I was not going to have her floundering around through life as I had. Soon afterward, I began instruction to enter the church myself. Now, mind you, this was no easy decision, for you see, Forrester was an atheist and an anarchist, and as such was opposed to marriage. But I had reached the point where I simply had to choose between God and man. I chose God, and without any particular joy or feeling, I was baptized into the Catholic Church. Can you imagine? Here I was, a radical, a single mother, a Roman Catholic. I often ask myself, what in the world is a woman like you doing in a church like this? Yes, this was the church of workers and immigrants, but it was also the church of power and privilege, a scandalous church that too often turned its back on the poor. 5 years after my conversion, I was still struggling to make some kind of sense of my life. I worked as a freelance writer and attended Mass, but I knew there was more. There had to be. My answer came in December of 1932, when I traveled to Washington, D.C. to cover a communist-led hunger march. How my heart broke as I watched my comrades unite in a cause that I, as a Catholic, was not free to join. The following day was the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and I made my way to the National Shrine. There, I begged God, with tears in my eyes, to open up some way for me to use whatever talents I had for the poor and the oppressed of this world. When I returned to New York City, Peter Morin was waiting on my doorstep. Peter, the French peasant, who ate in Skid Row beaneries and slept wherever he could find a place to rest his head. He was to become my teacher, my mentor, my friend. He was a man of ideas, and I was a woman of action, and together we started the Catholic Worker Movement. How to tell the story of what was to follow. I've been accused by more than a few people of rambling, and could spend days telling you stories about the Catholic worker, about our desire to create the kind of world which is easier for people to be good, about the newspaper, the houses of hospitality that sprung up around the country, about our farm commons, about the bread lines that formed when people simply showed up and we shared the few loaves and fishes that we had, about the colorful characters who moved in on us, about community. Yes, I could tell you stories all night, but let me get to the heart of the matter. What really matters is that we try to love Christ in those around us, especially the poor. We took as our manifesto the Sermon on the Mount and tried to live the revolutionary teachings of Jesus. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Blessed are the peacemakers. Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. You see, Jesus did not teach us to worship him. He taught us to follow him. Two entirely different things. And for me, following Jesus meant speaking out boldly against the works of war while trying to practice the works of mercy. It meant living in poverty and raging against injustice. It meant praying and picketing. It meant going to daily mass, and it meant going to jail. I said my rosary and I spoke my mind. My father called me a nut. The FBI called me erratic. Many of my love deeply. And yes, over the years, I have learned that love in practice is indeed a harsh and dreadful thing. Yet ultimately, love is the only thing. We can only share the few crumbs that we've been given and trust God to do the rest. We can throw our small pebble into the pond and have faith that its ever-widening circle will spread around the world. Yes, my friends, as I look back on it all, I see that life is full of detours, and that God writes straight with crooked lines. Or should I say, crooked lines.